Thank you, Dara. And I always like to appreciate our communications team for making things work for us. And that includes Ms. Dara Munifa Cooper, who just spoke with you. It also includes Mr. Ray J. Joseph, who's online with us. Not sure if he's online, but Mr. Matthias Clavier as well, and Ms. Leandra Kent, whether she's online or not, we thank them for their prep before today and today's support as well. Okay.
And Vanessa.
And Ms. Vanessa Forbes. And we thank all of you. Yes, thank you very much. We've had 3 excellent sessions so far, and today is going to be no less a dramatic session. We have something really great in store for you with respect to our presenter, his presentation, and the exercise activity. But before we do all that, I just wanted to remind all of us that we appreciate the partners that make this happen every time. And those partners include the School of Agriculture's Cooperative Extension Service here at the University of the Virgin Islands. It also includes the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund, as well as the West Georgia Farmers Cooperative, and our own Office of the Lieutenant Governor, specifically the Division of Cooperation and Trademarks. We thank you all for that support, but we could also not have this activity without the support, financially and otherwise, of the Southern SARE program. The Southern Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program has granted us a 2-year grant of funding to make this training happen. And we thank them. And as we speak, we are utilizing those resources in the best way we can to have impact here in our community and beyond. Because for the purpose of our presenter, I want to say this, so that he can know whom he's going to be speaking to today. We initially had in mind that this, first of all, would have been an in-person training. We all know what took place between last year and now, and so we're here virtually, but still getting lots of work done. We also had anticipated really only having a Virgin Islands contingency within our participation. But we now have persons who are from the Virgins and beyond. We have among us, for the presenter's purpose again, we have among us professional staff from the UVI School of Agriculture. We have farmers among us as well. We have persons on the US mainland who are seeking to develop initiatives, cooperative initiatives in Africa. But we also have someone actually in Africa, Ethiopia to be specific, who's also online with us. We have as well a medical doctor on board with us. So we have all these persons, I want to let the presenter know, who are on board with us, and I'm sure he's going to keep that in mind as he speaks to you today. Speaking of building blocks, in our first presentation, of course, we shared with you the intro to co-op development, a beautiful history of how this came about and how it's been useful. During session 2, we spoke about the governance, the structure, how to put together your operational structure to make the co-op happen and to function effectively. And then in session 3, we looked at building blocks, how to start a cooperative, step by step by step. And today, what we will be looking at is financing, cooperative financing, because there's no way to speak about developing a cooperative business without taking into account financing issues, which are definitely going to become a part and something important to have to be addressed. So to do so today, we have a dynamic speaker. But before we go on to introducing our speaker, does anyone have any quick reflections that you might want to share regarding our last session or the sessions in general? Just a few minutes for that.
Good morning. This is Cecile. I want to say I really appreciate the sessions that we've been having, and it has really helped to shape some of the planning that we're doing across continents, in Belize and Jamaica and Nigeria, as I talk to members of my team about how we could utilize what we're learning. So I want to really thank you. And even though you always supposed to have met in person, I'm so grateful that we are able to do this, because we would not have even known this happened and or participated. So I would encourage you to continue to use the Zoom model moving forward.
Thank you, Cecile. Thank you so much. Well said, and we will. Thank you so much.
Can I
Anyone
just say
else?
something? I want to
Yes.
make my apology for last session. I was preparing to escape out of England, so obviously I missed. So I want to apologize to my group 2, who I'm normally with, that I couldn't be here at the last session. And I really appreciate love all the work that's been going on, what I'm learning. And I can see now that I'm home where it's going to be vital and important here in Shashamane, Ethiopia. Thank you all.
Thank you as well. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, all. This is Sister Dejabana. I want to say I really have appreciated the sessions. I am very thankful for the information that you send afterwards with the notes and the videos so we can review. I appreciated the session, especially because that shows us what we can be doing and what we need to be doing, because we really can't do it on our own. So I thank everybody for their participation and their suggestions and the ability to go back and review the notes.
Thank you so much as well, Sister Dejabana. And those are all beautiful reflections, very encouraging reflections, and gives us a real reason to just keep doing what we are doing.
I want to say,
Mr. Leonard?
yes, I want to say thank you to the university and you in particular, Dr. Peterson, for being the hub and the driving force to developing cooperatives here in the Virgin Islands and abroad. I'm looking forward to getting started with our first cooperative. I'm excited to do and join with the other participants in developing a cooperative around Moringa. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Extremely encouraging. Thank you.
Good morning.
Yes, Brother
everyone. Yeah, I'd like to give thanks to Brother Akil too and others who are involved in this process. And in this time, in need of people start to get involved in some form of economics, so that we can empower ourselves. This workshop is timely. As a retired teacher, political activist, Pan-Africanist, congratulate you for promoting this and hope we can incorporate it and encourage other people in this community to start getting involved in cooperative or any form of businesses. So we can empower ourselves.
Thank you very much, Brother Liba. And look, I am very sure that all those who have spoken today have spoken for all of us. And we thank you very much again for the comments, very encouraging. And what you reminded me of as you spoke is that I need to always remind you that this is just phase 1 of a 2-phase project, and that phase 2 begins immediately after phase 1, meaning somewhere around the month of April or so. We're going to be having a mentorship phase that begins, which means that as we speak, as we go through phase 1, please keep in mind how you would like to put this information to use, what you would like to do on the practical side. Because between the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and the West Georgia Farmers Cooperative, we have mentors in place to work with you to go from A to B to C until you get to the end of the process. So keep that in mind as we speak, okay? And before I introduce our speaker for today, during the last session 3 that we met, I want to really reiterate my thanks to Mr. Terrence Courtney, because you may or may not recall, but we had 3 speakers lined up to speak with us the last time, but 2 could not make it for technical reasons. But Mr. Courtney took on the entire task and spoke for the whole session and did so extremely well. So I really want to thank him, although he's absent today. He's absent because he has to join another session where he has to deliver a presentation. So he asked me to convey his regards to you and wishes us well, of course, for another excellent session today. So another reminder, we have certificates that will be issued at the end of this short course. But if you miss more than one session, I'm sorry, again, we will not be able to issue a certificate. So just keep that in mind. So allow me now to introduce our speaker for today. And I met him extremely recently, and I can tell that we are lining ourselves up with the right people to get the job done. Attorney Clark Arrington. He's an experienced attorney and educator with degrees from Pennsylvania State University and the University of Notre Dame Law School. He currently serves as the General Counsel for Seed Commons. Seed Commons is a financial organization specializing in the non-extracting finances of cooperatively organized and worker-owned enterprises. He lives in Pennsylvania. He's also a partner in the law firm of Arrington, Owens, and Associates of Jackson, Mississippi. Prior to joining Seed Commons, Attorney Arrington was a consultant to new communities of Albany, Georgia, and taught and practiced law in Africa. He organized a master's degree program in community economic development at the Open University of Tanzania. He taught business law at the Kampala International University in Dar es Salaam, of course, that's Tanzania, and served as a special counsel. He served for 2 years as legal consultant to the African Development Bank in Tunisia. Before venturing to Africa, Attorney Arrington worked for the US Securities Exchange Commission, the Catholic University Law School, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, the Colon Law Firm of Columbus, Mississippi, and served as chair, general counsel, and capital coordinator of Equal Exchange. He also served as general counsel for the ICA Group, and served on the boards of the ICA Group, the Social Venture Network, the Cooperative Fund of New England, and the 21st Century Youth Leadership Movement in Selma, Alabama. He currently serves on the boards of the Nature's Garden for Victory and Peace in Tuskegee, Alabama. And our attorney, Arrington, is not only a certified member of the bar in one state, he's a member of the Pennsylvania, Mississippi, and Massachusetts Bar Associations. And if you've never heard of it before, the Cooperative Hall of Fame, you now know that Attorney Arrington is a 2021 inductee into the Cooperative Hall of Fame. So please join me in welcoming Attorney Arrington to our session today. Attorney Arrington, welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
Asante Sana. Wow, that guy sounds very impressive. And, I think you guys have created a really high bar listening to folk, and which was really energizing. I mean, the voices just, you know, really, there's a lot of power in those voices, in those accents and those tones. So I'm really energized, and it's very timely for me. You know, yesterday, and I guess I'll just say props to your US representative who was part of the prosecution team that's trying former President Trump. And she really sort of banged the nails into his coffin yesterday. It was an excellent presentation. And we don't hear a lot about the Virgin Islands or your representatives, but she made headlines yesterday, and you guys are on the map. Everybody in the world knows who the US Virgin Islands are. So that was really, really impressive, and I send out my props. I love teaching. I've taught pretty much all my life. And I've had the experience of, you know, I've had some good experiences. I spent 15 years in Africa. And before that, I helped set up probably the most revolutionary cooperative in the history of the United States, Equal Exchange. I mean, through our business, our for-profit business, we supported liberation struggles throughout the world, including the ANC, the Zapatistas in Mexico, Nicaraguan struggle, the El Salvador struggle, Peru. We currently now sell an olive oil from Palestine. So we use business as a means of social change and support for social causes. I heard you guys someone mentioned Belize, and wow, I was in Belize. I spent some time in Belize. I have a good friend, Billie Jean Young. And I recall, I never really met this woman, but for quite some time, I advised a woman in Belize who was setting up a cooperative. And I guess I met her when I was there, but the advisory relationship took place after I left. Anyway, it was just a good memory. So I'm in a really good space right now. And I hope I can be productive. I hope I can be, add value, and I hope I can, I'm just going to put on my clock so I don't totally overrun the time. And I hope I can add value to what you guys have been doing. But I'm feeling that the bar is a little high, so bear with me. So let me just start off by first saying, we're talking about cooperatives, but let's not get too hung up on the word cooperative. Let's think about it more in terms of cooperation than this technical entity that people refer to as cooperatives. We must remember, and I know you know, that we did business before the Europeans invaded Africa. It's not like we just, oh, wow, this is how you do business. This is how you cooperate. No, we had our own values. We had our own ways of doing business. We had our own governance structures. And we had our own sense of cooperation. I was able to experience, I mean, I was in Tanzania. That's where I spent my time in Africa. And under the leadership of Julius Nyerere, Tanzania perfected and reestablished African socialism, as he called it, for lack of a better word, but the word for his program, Ujamaa, means familyhood. So our approach to doing business had a lot to do with family, had a lot to do with land, and that's a whole nother set of lectures, and I wish I had the time and the opportunity to share, but just want to say that, I like to, and I represent a lot.
The window is small, that's why you can't see everything.
I represent several organizations, and I like to let them know that we're not going to get caught up in something called a community land.
But let's go to everybody first, right?
You need to mute.
You want to put it up? Put it here?
Yeah, I thought you didn't want to send it. I thought you were emailing it. But if you want to send it,
you should have been asking for it, right?
Yeah. So then, yeah, just change it.
Mr. Peterson, can you mute your mic, please?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, I'm an old school professor. You don't talk when other people are talking. I mean, that's as a professor. That's no problem. But not to get caught up in the boxes of cooperative, of LLC, of community land trust. And what I guess one of the things I like about practicing law is the opportunity to be creative and the opportunity to reconnect with our roots, our African traditions. And you see them becoming manifested in a lot of things we're doing now, particularly the community land trust. It's a total African concept. And for that matter, cooperation is an African concept. Not that it could not have been independently arrived or developed in other places, but we also had a sense of cooperation. But now we do cooperatives, and it's a very technical way of doing business in the United States because it's governed by the tax code. Now, for the most part, any organization can be a cooperative, technically, if it incorporates the 7 principles, or most of the 7 principles of cooperation, which are the Rochdale principles, which came out of England in the 1800s. Those principles, there's a document I shared and it has the cooperative principles, but I'm sure you're aware of them. And 2 of them are essential for the purposes of the tax code and the security laws. And those are patronage dividends and 1 person, 1 vote. So if your organization has patronage dividends and 1 person, 1 vote, you are considered a cooperative, technically tax-wise. Now, how are you organized? In some states, And I'm not familiar with the Virgin Islands. I'd love to explore your laws. But in some states, they now have specific statutes that you can incorporate as a cooperative. I avoid them with like the plague because they put you in a box. And I don't always, and my clients don't always want to be in that box. The only benefit I find to incorporating as a cooperative in those states that have cooperative laws is that in many states, you can only use the word cooperative if you incorporate under the cooperative statute. But then it prescribes who's on your board and how you pass resolutions and members. I mean, it's just, and sometimes you want to be a little more flexible about your governance and about how you're structured. And most of my clients do. So I avoid those. But so otherwise, you're looking at a regular corporation, we call it a C Corp. And now it's very popular to use a limited liability company. But you could also use a limited partnership, and you could also use a general partnership. Most people today will use either the limited liability company or the C Corp. And you just, and this bare bones, just bring this entity into existence by incorporating it in whatever state you're interested in incorporating it in. It doesn't necessarily have to be the state in which you're operating in. Seed Commons, the company that I represent, we're incorporated in Maine. And I don't know exactly why we're incorporated in Maine before I got there, but we're based in New York. And then we've got 30, at least 30 peers, affiliates throughout the United States, but we're operated by the laws of Maine. But we're a nonprofit corporation. And you could also have a nonprofit cooperative based on cooperative principles. I'm not going to go into that. That's a whole nother sort of set of discussions. But principally, you're going to look at either a C Corp or a limited liability company. And the bottom line is that you eliminate personal liability because the corporation is liable for its own liabilities, its own debts and obligations, and the individuals are not. And that's both in the limited liability company and the corporation. And then secondly, they can be structured in such a way that there's pass-through tax treatment, meaning the income generated by the cooperative, by the organization, is passed through to the individual members, and that is where it's taxed. Otherwise, in a corporation, there's the double taxation. You're taxed at the corporate level, and then if you distribute dividends, you're taxed again at the individual level. Whereas in a cooperative, under what is called subchapter T, if you distribute or allocate the income to the members based on patronage, the corporation doesn't pay any taxes. And so that's an advantage. In the LLC, you can also pass through losses. So there's a little bit of a more of an advantage if you're in an LLC and you can use the losses. If you have income from other sources, losses are, they're beneficial because they reduce your tax burden. But if you don't have income from other sources, it doesn't matter whether you pass through the losses or not, because they have no consequence other than to reduce income from other sources. So in terms of, I want to get back to my outline. Entity types, I mean, basically we're looking at the C Corp and we're looking at the limited liability company. Capital structure is interested because both in the limited liability company and the C Corp, you have what are called internal capital accounts. And internal capital accounts, that's how the cooperative is managed. And I guess first I should say there are different types of cooperatives before I sort of get into internal capital accounts, because depending on the type of cooperative, it's structured very differently. It's really a different animal. The three types of cooperatives we're focused on today, and I think throughout your course, are number one, consumer co-ops, agricultural co-ops and worker-owned co-ops. I came to the cooperative world via worker ownership. And then, working with the Federation, that was one of my first jobs out of law school. That's a whole nother story. But that's how I learned about cooperatives, was working with the Federation. And what my focus was on creating worker-owned businesses, not necessarily creating agricultural enterprises. And I definitely was not interested in consumer, although I did quite a bit of work with consumer. Now, in a consumer cooperative, the people who patronize the store are the members. And depending on how much you purchase from the store, if the store experiences any profits, that surplus is redistributed to those consumer members. My problem with the consumer co-op is that it's basically a traditional capitalistic organization, in that the relationship between owners and labor is the same as it would be in any corporation. It is to the self-interest and best interests of the consumer members to minimize expenses, so they increase the amount of money that they may receive as a patronage dividend. And that means labor. That means not to pay labor as much as labor might want to be paid. Now, there is the ability to structure a consumer co-op so that you basically have two components. You have a worker ownership component and you have a consumer component. I think they call that now sort of a two-tier or multi-tier cooperative. And I definitely support that. But just a straight up consumer co-op, doesn't excite me. The farm co-op, and there are some big farm co-ops. Land of Lakes, there's some, billion-dollar entities where you basically have corporations, farm corporations, big multinational farm corporations, with thousands and thousands of acreage under cultivation, are part of a cooperative. And those are producer co-ops. Now, at the Federation's level and at your level, we're not going to be big corporations forming a cooperative or joining a cooperative. We're going to be probably small farms, and we're going to be small farms that join a cooperative. Now, and the farmer cooperative is obviously you're buying materials collectively. You're sourcing your materials collectively, and you're selling your materials collectively, because you're going to get a better price for quantity. And so if you provide 50% of what is being sold, you get 50% of the profits if there's a surplus. If you're buying 50% of the supplies, if there's any surplus after purchasing all the supplies, you would get whatever that percentage of the supplies you purchase, you would get that as a patronage dividend. And then there's the worker co-op, which is based, at least, and I've done some really, you'd be impressed with some of the work I've done. Really landmark work, which is in part why I'm in the Hall of Fame, blah, blah, blah. I'm not bragging, but because it wasn't about that. But the worker co-op in the United States, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, which is at the ICA group. When I left the Federation, I went to the ICA group. And we built legal structures and finance structures based on the Mondragon cooperatives. And so we brought Mondragon to the United States. And even today, what is called the ICA bylaws, which I helped draft, are sort of the model bylaws for a worker-owned cooperative. And obviously in a worker-owned cooperative, the workers are the owners. Want to move along, and I think I should probably talk about patronage, because we understand one person, one vote, and one person, one vote, regardless of what your capital contribution. So you could have put in $50,000 and I put in $50. We both have one vote for all matters, and we'll get into governance in a minute. But I just want to indicate the one person, one vote, in contrast to patronage, which is how you economically participate with the cooperative. And there are ways of different formulas for distributing patronage dividends. In a worker-owned co-op, it's salaries, could be hours worked, could be seniority, could be a combination of all three. 30% is from the hours worked, 30% is from your salary, 30% is seniority. In an agricultural cooperative, as I discussed, it's based on your percentage of the production. That would determine your patronage. And in a consumer co-op, you're looking to minimize expenses, get a return for your bulk purchases. And again, based on the percentages, your percentage of the purchases, that would be your percentage of the rebate of the patronage dividend, to the extent there are surplus, if there's surplus income at the end of the year. The capital structure, which, and again, separated from voting. Voting is just one person, one vote. Now, you think everybody knows that. But the capital structure is based on what is called internal capital accounts. And there are generally two types of capital accounts. There's the corporate general collective capital account, and there's the individual capital accounts. In most farm co-ops, it's a call, because what happens, you get, let's say you got $1,000 worth of income surplus as farmers. You may want to retain money because you may need to buy equipment that you're collectively using. You may want to do marketing. There may be things you need to do as a co-op. Now, to the extent you can expense that, fine, it's tax deductible. But if you want to keep a certain amount of money in the corporation for a rainy day, then you have to pay taxes on whatever that amount is. So if, let's say, the total amount of profit was $1,000, well, we're going to keep 30% of that for a rainy day, which would be $300. And at the corporate tax level, it means we probably pay 20%, which would be about $30, if I'm not mistaken, on $300. No, it'd be, I'm sorry, it'd be $60 for $300. So we pay the corporate tax. Now that $240 is accredited to the internal capital account of the collective. And then the other 600 is distributed among the farmers based on their production. And the way the tax code works, and that's not taxed, the farmer pays the tax on that. And basically, if the corporation, the cooperative, gives the farmer 20%, then they can legitimately, they can defer taxation. I'm not going to get into written notices of allocation, but they can basically, that $600 is divided up among the farmers, and they pay the tax on that. And the corporation does not pay the tax. And that's basically the internal, the capitalization structure. Now, generally, the first thing that goes into that account, in the event the money is not distributed, is your membership fee. Membership fee is $1,000. The first entry on your personal internal capital account is $1,000. Then now, if you actually get the cash, nothing goes on the internal capital account. But in many instances, the co-op doesn't pay the cash, doesn't have the cash, or is using the cash for some other purpose. And so it's called an allocation. So in a cooperative, we must be in a distinction between an allocation, which basically means the co-op owes you this money, and a distribution, which means we actually paid this amount of money. So the allocations are noted on your internal capital account. So I may have been entitled to, after my second year, to $50. So now my internal capital account shows $1,000 for my membership, and the $50 that wasn't distributed to me, it was allocated, but it's on my internal capital account. That's it, again, that's a whole nother series of lectures on internal capital accounts. Governance, as we indicated, it's one person, one vote, but at the same time, you can have different levels of voting for different kinds of issues. Now, generally, most people today, most people I work with, they want to make decisions based on consensus. And consensus means that nobody objects. It basically means everybody has a veto if it's being done by consensus. Now, unanimous means that everybody also has a veto, but it means everybody has to affirmatively approve it. Whereas with consensus, if you don't agree, as long as you don't express dissent, it can pass by consensus. Nobody disagreed. But by unanimous, everybody has to agree. And then we talk about majorities, 50%, 60%. And some matters, like for instance, expelling a member, that probably should be more than 50%. Perhaps even bringing on new members should be more than 50%. But we have different ways of measuring, what votes require, how much vote, et cetera. Some co-ops and some organizations also add another layer. And was a group I work with in Tuskegee, and I'm sorry, I got to check in on the time, team. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not doing bad. The National Black Food and Justice Alliance will have a second group of people. In Nature's Garden, they call them the Council of Elders, so that certain votes require also the approval of a second body. And it's basically to preserve the mission, the legacy, the core values of the organization, so that some group of people don't come in and all of a sudden they say, oh, let's make some changes. Let's sell everything to Unilever. Or let's just sell this out. Well, in order to make certain decisions, you would then need either a higher majority vote, like say 80%, or it has to go now to a council of elders or a council of wise people who would have to approve it. And generally that's, changes in the bylaws, changes in the articles, anything that affects the cooperative nature of the organization. So otherwise everything is like, fine, do whatever you want to do. But if you touch some of these critical, value-based aspects, features of the organization, we need our priest kings to weigh in on this. So that's governance in a nutshell. I'm back to my outline, I'm sorry. Okay, so now let's talk about conventional business financing. Let's go into financing. And I hope, and let me just stop here and say, are there any questions regarding governance and organization and, corporate structure of a cooperative? Are there any questions?
Yes, good morning.
Sure.
My name is Linda, and I obviously have I don't have the background in terms of all of the financial things that you talked about. However, what is the checklist? Is there a checklist to cover these kinds of things when forming a corporation? Because it in the ones that I've sat in on or that we've tried to organize, obviously we never get in as in depth as in the the breakdown in terms of patronage, things to discuss in this kind of way.
I hear you. Yeah, no, let me just say, I mean, I'm old school, so I'm used to, I grew up, the professor lectured, you took notes, blah, blah, blah. And I know as I've evolved, people say, hey, where's the handout, my man? Where's the outline? And I should have done that, but on sort of a one-time presentation, I don't have those materials. But I'm pretty sure the Federation has those materials. And as an attorney, obviously, I'm available to, provide that level of technical assistance. But yes, there should be a checklist. And most importantly, one of the principles of of being a cooperative is education, continuous education for all members. And there's a really great book by my colleague, Jessica Gordon-Nimbron, called Collective Courage. And Collective Courage is the history of the Black African-American cooperative movement. And one of the things that runs, one of the themes that runs through the cooperative movement in the United States, which was much more extensive pre-1950, basically pre-Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey got busted. I mean, we stopped kind of trying to do business, certainly collectively, and got more into this sort of nonprofit, charity kind of way of doing business. Because Marcus Garvey, they tried to put him in jail. They put him in jail, kicked him out of the country. And because he wasn't in compliance with various business laws. But the point is that all of these cooperative efforts that started throughout the South and Northeast, I'm sure Virgin Islands, et cetera, they all started with education, with folk forming education groups. And so exactly what you're talking about, Linda, within your cooperative group, you educate yourselves, or you engage in an education process. And some businesses I could reference, they require you to complete an education component in order to even become a member. Like you can't even buy a share in this cooperative until you pass these courses. You cover this material. And then also, and it's sort of at another level, I'm with some organizations, and their concern is that we don't want people on our board, we're questioning democracy. And I know we all have a lot of reason now to question democracy. Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, those Greek heroes, they had big questions about democracy. Because you could end up with a Trump. You could end up with a Donald Trump, a racist, whatever. You can end up with somebody like that, running your country, running your affairs. And so some of the organizations I represent now, they require even another level of education. You've got to have a certain level of education to vote, and then you've got to have another level of education in order to assume a leadership role. And I totally endorse that. But the point being, and I'm not going on too much, is I suggest forming educational groups, and I suggest the Federation of Southern Cooperatives has tons of materials that I think would address the checklist question. And then if nothing else, you can call me and I'll help you. I'll give you whatever information I have.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? So this is Cecile. I find it very fascinating that you talked about the history of using these cooperatives in the early days to actually help the freedom movement.
Oh, no question about it.
And is there any, I've read Jessica's book and was fascinated how the ancestors created co-ops to form insurance and different things coming out of enslavement. So this part that you have here, Tanzania was a country I was very interested in because of Julius Nyerere, and then because now of some of the things that I've observed there in John, the new president, right? And so what else can we read that would be helpful to us? I'm going to go look up the Ujamaa familyhood and land that you talked about, right? Julius Nyerere's African Socialism.
Yeah, the Arusha Declaration.
The Arusha, okay.
Several books about Ujamaa, which was his vision of African socialism, which is based on village. And there's there's a lot of critique, this is blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is he didn't have resources. But right. Tanzania became and is probably the most educated country in the citizenry, or the most educated in Africa. Nyerere's position was develop the people before you develop the minerals. The gold and the oil, that's going to be in the ground. And when we get to a level of sophistication where we can deal with it in our own self-interest, that's when we'll take it out of the ground. Until then, let's build our own education. Let's develop ourselves. So their focus initially was on health and on education, but they just didn't. I mean, the model for Tanzania is really Sweden. Sweden, Palme and Nyerere were big buddies, but Sweden had access to resources, so they didn't have to build infrastructure. Tanzania didn't have roads, they didn't have hospitals, they didn't have schools, they didn't have colleges, they didn't have educated folk. So that was Nyerere's focus. But anyway, that's a very interesting history, and there's a lot of there are a lot of books, and you have to just read them with keeping in mind some people were written by the CIA.
Yeah, I'm aware of
the CIA. So it's like, oh yeah, African socialism, blah 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 blah. But then some are written from more critical. Anything from the University of Dar es Salaam.
University of Dar es
about
Salaam.
Walter Rodney. I think that's a.
I have that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just say this to say that we're at such a critical time now as Afro descendants in the diaspora, having some of the same conditions that even though we think we're in independent nations, we're actually still under colonized structures. And so that reference that you made as to it being able to fund the liberation movement, but also as an example, I think we're at a time where we should be doing that critical thinking to think of what could we begin to do now that could take us to real, true self-determination. So I thank you for the references that you've used.
Yeah, and again, we need to sort of move on, but
Good morning.
Just from my experience, there are a lot of interesting things going on right now. Where folk are sort of coming back to realizing the power of our collectiveness and our need to come together and support each other in terms of sustainability, and the need for us to think of ourselves as an African people and not as some folk from the Virgin Islands or some folk from Philadelphia, but we're global. So anyway, there's some interesting things going on, and hopefully through our future contacts and involvement, I'll be able to share more. Now let's talk about financing. And I'm just going to go quick to sort of financing 101 and understanding the difference between debt and equity. And the problem with co-ops is they didn't have a way of attracting equity. And I will say, I know you're going to say, but I spearheaded structuring how to bring equity into cooperatives. That's one of the things I'm recognized for. Because at this company I helped set up called Equal Exchange, we needed outside investors. And through the traditional pure cooperative model, there's no room for outside investors. And so I created this kind of preferred hybrid instrument that became known as the Class B share. And now it's widely used by cooperatives and Silicon Valley entrepreneur. Everybody uses the Class B. And I should have patented. I should have said it's the Clark Arrington. But so debt. Let's talk first of all about debt. So cooperatives are normally funded by debt, but before we even get to debt, there's the 3 F's for funding any type of business, which is family, friends, and fools. That becomes the money for at least the startup of a company as it evolves. It's the family money, it's the money from friends, and it's the money from fools, so to speak. I'm not saying they're fools, but cooperatives are limited in terms of how is that money coming into the cooperative. What is the finance mechanism? It's generally a debt instrument. And a debt instrument differs from an equity instrument in that a debt instrument is fixed. If it's $50,000, you owe $50,000. It's got a set term. You owe $50,000 and you're going to pay it back in 10 years and you're going to pay it back with 5% interest. It's generally secured. If you don't pay back the $50,000 and you're in default and you're making your payments or some other conditions, then we get security, which may be normally land, or it may be in a cooperative, personal guarantees, which also then goes to land, particularly if it's an agricultural cooperative. But most lenders, particularly traditional banks and US, just traditional lenders, they don't care about income. They don't care about the income statement. They want to see the balance sheet. They want to see what assets do you have. Oh, if you've got $100,000 worth of assets, we'll lend you 75% of that. We'll lend you $75,000. Now, whether your projections for generating income, obviously they're looking at that, that's relevant, but that's secondary because they know if they don't get their money back, they can take whatever that asset is. And so that's why, the lawyers and, file security interest. And land is the best because land doesn't go anywhere. Your car, your jewelry, so I mentioned your antique furniture, all that can get burned up, stolen, sold and, whatever. And so now the bank doesn't have its collateral. But if it's land, they know that ain't going nowhere. So that's traditionally how cooperatives have funded. And if you're talking about, particularly, in the Federation, which is why they tried to create their own loan fund, banks, unless you got putting up the land, they don't want to fund you. They don't want to say, okay, you can do this crop. Well, what happens if there's a natural disaster, there's a drought? What happens if the prices drop? What happens if the cost of supplies goes up? But if you got land. And so that's always been a challenge for cooperatives is this financing piece. Now we're gonna go into, we've still got a minute or two. I'm gonna tell you about some other sources because the landscape has radically changed. I don't say radically, but it's changed. There are now more comfortable sources of financing for cooperatives, more sensitive sources of financing for cooperatives. And in particular, my organization, Seed Commons, but for a lot of organizations that I've been involved with. Now, debt is generally also manifested by a loan agreement and a security agreement. And like I said, the security agreement, particularly in an agricultural co-op or in a consumer co-op, can include personal guarantees. Because you can just imagine in a consumer co-op, you're renting a building. So you don't really own any land. So when the bank says, well, what's our security? They want to look to the individual members, and that can be like, whoa, wait a minute. Because at that level, they don't treat everybody equally. If I've got like 5 houses and you're renting a studio apartment and they call the loan, they're not going to look to you who you got an apartment. They're going to look to me because I got 5 houses. I got resources. So they're going to follow the money. Then it's up to me to say, well, I paid 100% of the loan that we owed. Now you guys owe me your proportionate share. And we would have had an agreement that covered that, but not with the bank. So financing for cooperatives has always been a challenge. As opposed to equity, which is how most businesses, we, look at the stock market and, it's crazy numbers about if you'd have bought shares of Apple back in the day, $100 worth of Apple was worth, I don't know, like $1 million or something today. Because equity has a great deal of risk. It's not fixed. You buy a share, you don't have a loan agreement, you have a shareholders agreement, and you have a share certificate. And you're repaid based on the performance of the organization. And the repayment is in 2 stages. And this is a piece that, you need to think through in terms of organizational structure, et cetera, because we get caught up a little bit. But anyway, but the two ways that from equity that you get a return. One is in dividends, as I talked to you earlier about the patronage dividends. You don't necessarily, at the end of the $100 or $1,000 in profits, and $300 is going to stay with the corporation, and we're going to pay taxes. Then this other 700, we're going to distribute it. We're going to give it to the workers. It's not even going to be allocated, or it could be allocated. Now, if it's distributed, that's called a dividend. And some people, they like to get dividends. But in a regular corporate context, you got the double taxation. In a cooperative or a sub-T corporation or organization, you don't have the double taxation. It's just taxed once when it's distributed to the shareholder. The other way of getting returns from the cooperative is through the appreciation of the value of your membership interest. So if the shares, if the allocation, that $700 is not distributed, but it's allocated, now the company owes me. Now, one of the provisions, because they're conceptually in a cooperative, that $700 that's now allocated among the members technically is debt that the cooperative owes to those members. And the 7 principles, there could be, and there are a lot of different principles, but one of the principles used to be, and it still is among a lot of cooperatives, is that members don't charge market rate interest. So that allocated amount that's now in your internal capital account that's building value is only maybe getting 3% interest a year or 4% interest a year. However, the value of the enterprise may significantly increase. And there is a way of allocating that value, the appreciation of the value of the business among its owners, particularly if part of that value is related to some intellectual property piece, or it's related to land, and certainly in a housing co-op, that could easily be the case. So you just have to keep in mind that in a business, there's the distributions, which are dividends, and then there's the appreciation in value. What's this company, Berkshire Hathaway, which they don't distribute any dividends. They never distribute dividends. But one share is like $5,000. But you can bet on that a share in 10 years is going to probably be worth $15,000, and they split. So if you got a share and it's $15,000, you now have 4 shares. Each are worth $5,000. So I bought one share for $5,000, and now 10 years later, I got 5 shares worth $10,000. That's Berkshire Hathaway. Same thing in Mondragon. Now, Mondragon is set up in such a way that there's no collective account. They're all individual accounts, but there are no distributions until you leave the worker-owned company. So basically what they created in Mondragon was a pension fund based on the profits. So all of the profits are retained by the company, but they're allocated to all of the members. No distributions. I worked there 20 years. I don't get dividends, I just get my salary. But when I retire, I now get what's allocated in my account, and I get it paid out on an annual basis. I get it paid out lump sum, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how equity works, or at least the distribution of equity in a cooperative. Now, what I created, which is sort of the equity piece of a cooperative, was to say, because there's something called preferred shares. And preferred shares are a little mixture of debt and a little mixture of pure equity. Now, of course, also I failed to mention, in equity, traditionally, you vote based on the number of shares you have. If I own 10% of the shares, I get 10% of the vote, and I get 10% of the profits. Whereas in a cooperative, I only get 10% of the profits. I only get 1 vote. I don't get 10% of the votes. A preferred share in a regular corporation is traditionally non-voting, no voting, and it pays a dividend. So if I have a $1,000 preferred share, it may pay 3-4%. But that 3-4% is paid from profits, whereas traditionally debt is paid before you get the profits. It's an expense item. Because if it's not paid, the lender can foreclose on you. And so that has to be paid. You've got to make that monthly payment. It's one of your expenses. Whereas in preferred, the formula is, okay, we paid all our expenses, now what's left over? And so I've got a preferred share. So I now get a dividend before the regular shareholders get a dividend. So in a cooperative, that works in such a way that the preferred shareholder will get a dividend before the patronage dividends are allocated or distributed to the members. And that's one way of bringing equity into a cooperative. And like I said, it's pretty, it's kind of standard now. And there are all kinds of features that are attributed to the preferred share, because it can be cumulative. If you didn't pay it this year, then you owe it next year, and you can't pay dividends to the workers until you pay all the back dividends owed to the preferred shareholders. At Equal Exchange, we guaranteed 3%, but we targeted 5%. So we said, we're going to try to get you 5%, but we're going to guarantee you 3%. So if we don't pay you 3%, that gets rolled over. And one of the things that made my company so successful was that we exceeded the 3% every year. And so people, rather than say, well, yeah, I'm getting this good coffee, organic, it's purchased from cooperatives in Nicaragua or Zimbabwe, and my money, the cooperatives in Zimbabwe, they're supporting the ANC. The coffee we're selling in Tanzania, it's going to a fund in America that's supporting the ANC. The coffee we're buying in Nicaragua is from some cooperatives that are in the line, behind the lines of the Nicaraguan liberation movement. In Mexico, it's in Chiapas. And so, people say, yeah, I'm getting this great coffee, and I'm also supporting liberation. And I'll just, and I'll move on. But it was great coffee because we only purchase from cooperatives at what is called fair trade. And that's a whole nother lecture. But at the time, coffee, the market price might have been 50 cents a pound. The fair trade price was $2.50 a pound. So we're going to pay 5 times the market. So of course we get the best coffee. I mean, you can sell to this, Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, and they're paying you 50 cents, and you can sell to Equal Exchange, and we're going to give you $2.50. Oh, everybody wanted to do business with. They still want to do business with. Anyway, but that's, and we only dealt with cooperatives. Another thing was that in our cooperatives, the cooperatives we dealt with, these folk, had their kids were going to school, they had roofs on their, houses, the kids had shoes, people were eating, because they were distributing those surplus funds among the farmers. And it wasn't going into some company, or it wasn't going in our pockets. But that's how much profit margin is in some of these products that are sold these days. Okay, let me entertain questions. And I think I've covered, certainly, I've given you an overview of what financing, the concept of financing within a cooperative, the challenge of doing it with debt, and how you can do it with equity. But I guess probably I'm looking at 49 minutes, I've got 11 minutes. let me tell you, my organization, Seed Commons, my organization, Seed Commons, we do what is called non-extractive financing. So it's a little bit like the preferred share, whereas we'll make a loan, but then we don't get paid back. We get paid back out of what is called special net profits. So after all the bills are paid, the workers are paid, maybe there's a bonus, maybe there's a salary increase. If there's anything left over, or at that point, you reduce the debt. And you do that until the debt is paid in full. So, and we only take security on an asset that is purchased with our money. So if you borrowed $50,000 and you used it strictly for working capital, which I didn't go into different types of debt, but but you used it for working capital, that means there wouldn't be any security interest for us, and we wouldn't have a security. But if you used the $50,000 to buy a truck, we would have a security interest in that truck. But that's the only thing we're taking security in. Most lenders, and we have this fight with folk, because they'll say, okay, we're lending you $50,000. We want a security interest on everything you own. And if we want a first, a second, whatever it is, we want it, and on everything you acquire thereafter. So thereafter, my guys come in and say, okay, yeah, we'll finance this truck. And these other lenders say, no, 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 we have the security interest on this truck. Look, and we'll, I'm the lawyer. No, 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 we have what is called a purchase money security interest. We purchased the truck. We have a security interest. I worked with a woman, Victoria Kisombe in Tanzania, and she came up with this concept to support women-owned businesses. Rather than giving them the loan, she would buy the asset and then lease the asset to them. So she financed a lot of sewing co-ops and office supply co-ops and restaurants. And so she would actually buy the assets. The assets in her name, or her company's name, Selfina, and the entrepreneur, the women's cooperative or enterprise, they would lease, this truck or this copy machine or these sewing machines from Selfina. At the end of the lease, she'd sell it to them for $1. Now, we ended up with some disastrous situation. I mean, we've recovered, but the concept was like, wow, this is a beautiful concept. And she really did do a lot of great work. What happened was success got to her. She was, all of a sudden she was, they wanted her at the World Bank, they wanted her in Geneva. I mean, she's now a world superstar. And she had, and money's just coming in. Everybody wants to invest in Selfina in Tanzania. And so she had to gear up, capacity in a very, in a quick way. And so she ended up with some incompetent people doing some incompetent loans. And when she got into some difficulty and looked to what her assets were, she found that these copy machines were, weren't working. The computers weren't working. Sewing machines weren't in the place anymore. A lot of men use their wives to borrow money to get assets for their own business. So it was a front. Anyway, but that was an interesting way of dealing with debt on the asset basis. And so now, this next round, we sort of, okay, let's figure this out. Much more monitoring of the assets that are being purchased and checking on them. Now, like I said, with Seed Commons, we don't do that. We only take an asset, a security interest in the assets that we purchase. The other thing I wanted to say about Seed Commons is think of us as like a mothership with a bunch of satellites. So we have 30 satellites across the country. They're local organizations. What we do at the mothership is we provide technical assistance and the money. We have a fund of about $25 million. So at the local level, if you had a peer group in the Virgin Islands, you would then put together your business proposal, you give it to the mothership, and then all of the satellites would come together, they'd look at the proposal and say, okay, cool. Let's lend the Virgin Islands peer group this amount of money for their cooperative. Now, our theory, as I was explaining the other day, it's based on our emphasis is on building not capital, but technical assistance at the local level. So we know that if you guys came to us with a proposal and our guys looked at it, the community of other peer groups looked at the proposal, said, okay, this will work. And the Virgin Island guys are going to make sure it works. We know they have the capacity to do a marketing plan, to do to check on the accounts, to look at the financing. We're very comfortable that regardless of what your credit rating is and what the security interest is, this business is going to work because it's got that local participation. And any monies that come back or repaid, they stay with the local group. So if you borrowed $50,000 and you got repaid $50,000, that $50,000 wouldn't go back to the mothership, although we manage it, but it would be your money. And you wouldn't have to go through a group decision-making process. You could then just say, hey, give us $25,000, we're putting it into a tomato farm. And so you have now an incentive to get, to make sure that project is successful. So that's Seed Commons. We're considered, they call it non-extractive financing. But there are other organizations, there's Shared Capital, which Terrence is on the board of directors of Shared Capital. There's Cooperative Fund of New England. I'm on the board of Cooperative Fund of New England. And we're looking for potential organizations that we can mentor outside of New England. There's LEAF. I used to be on the board of LEAF. I created all their legal documents. That's based in Boston. They basically finance worker-owned businesses more so than agricultural. But Shared Capital is definitely into agricultural related enterprises. So is Cooperative Fund of New England, and so is Seed Commons. I mean, we rely on what our local folk want to finance. Okay, I'm gonna close it down for now and entertain questions, and then we can go to the exercise.
I have a question. Do you with the Shared Capital, the Cooperative Fund, LEAF, and all of these, do you finance foreign projects?
No.
No international projects.
I don't think so.
So who can we go to for international projects?
Well, there's an let me just say, number one, there's the African Development Bank, and I kind of start there. And it might be some difficulty. I mean, I wish I could refer to some people, but I'm not sure who I know is still there. But the African Development Bank finances African development in African countries. They fund intermediaries. So rather than doing a particular deal, they'll do a particular organization. A lot of them are microcredit, and those organizations would then provide the international financing. A lot of them are based in the United States. I'm just trying to think of a couple. There's this classic loan fund, and I know they do a lot of international work, because the hottest thing on the international scene are projects that are led by Black women. That's like, they get funded like, so the UN has a bunch of stuff. Boy, I just need a minute to sort of think through. I haven't been in that world for a while, but there are organizations in the United States that do international financing. A lot of it is crowdfunding. I'm working with two organizations they're pulling individual money. So one is us Lifting Up Us. They're based out of Atlanta, and they're raising money among their members, Black folk, and they're doing a recycling plant in Ghana. There's another group I'm involved with, African International Finance Corporation. Again, individuals putting up money, and again, they're looking to do some projects in Ghana. So that's really sort of where you would start. And I didn't get into that, but I'm a big proponent of what I call capital quilombos, and that's forming an investment club. And you can have up to 100 members and you're still not regulated. You don't have to worry about securities. You don't have to worry about Investment Company Act. But if you're like 10, 15 people and you guys are contributing every month, you know, whatever, $100, $50, one of the groups I'm in, they do up to $500 per month. You're now building, I mean, within a year, I mean, this group I'm working with, they're projected to have $200,000. There's a group of Colombos I work with in Mississippi in what is called the Lumumba district, and it's 7 of them, and they've got well over $1 million. It's their money, and they can do whatever they want to do with it. And the classic, to me, you know, now we sort of look at capital appreciation among Black folk, and Jessica in Collective Courage, she references this. I mean, because that's what folk were doing. They're forming educational groups, and then they were pooling their money because they couldn't get money from no banks. They had to finance that stuff themselves. And then you had the classic of Marcus Garvey, who ended up with millions of folk and millions of dollars. I mean, they just, you know, they lack some capacity, but they were sabotaged by the FBI. I mean, just they supposedly violated some security laws. But then you sort of from Marcus Garvey, the next major capital formation effort by Black folk was in the 1970s by Reverend Leon Sullivan in Philadelphia. And I cite this example because he got his church parishioners, he had what was called the 1036 plan. You give $10 a month for 36 months, you buy a share for $360. Of course, people were giving more than $10 a month, but it was all going into one bank, First Pennsylvania. So the First Pennsylvania bank folk would say, well, you know, like every month we're getting like $50,000 from, you know, these Black folk from this church. What do you guys want to do? You want to borrow some money? We'll lend you some money based on, we'll leverage this amount of money. We trust you. We see this money coming in every month. And, you know, one of their first projects was something called Progress Plaza, which is on Broad Street in Philadelphia. It's the main drag. And it's a viable shopping mall to this day. It has the Black Bank, you know, has a gym, it's not a large, you know, these, you know, 50-acre things, but it's a meaningful, sizable, and it's got a supermarket, et cetera. But that was done by leveraging the funds that were provided by individuals. And I think you can do the same thing internationally because our dollars go a long ways overseas, long ways. I was probably too much on that question.
Can I just ask, thank you. Thank you for all of that. I mean, some of the questions that I want to ask. My name is Ambassador Jasmine. I'm in Ethiopia. And obviously, you know, with the Back to Africa movement, we've got at least 1,900 of us who are living in Shashmani, Ethiopia. Now, the people want to do things, but they're doing individual the best they can. If we want to get loans for helping with cooperative in the area, how would we go about it? Considering the fact also that no money goes out, and this is where the problem comes. We do see the indigenous Ethiopians get help from NGOs and things like that, but not the returnees who would then have to pay out and cannot.
I'm not sure I understand when you say pay out.
Okay, with us, the returnees who are here, with Ethiopia, Kenya, and so on, no money goes out. Money comes in, but it doesn't go out.
Oh,
And
okay.
with the returnees, they would like to do cooperatives, they would like to do collect. But when it comes to loans, how would they go about paying back
Oh,
loans, and where, who, how?
yeah, I don't know. Ethiopia's, you know, I don't know Ethiopia. I know Uganda. I know the East African community, which is Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya, Mali, you know, and these are the former English colonies, and they've got a trade bloc. And so they encourage, you know, international finance. So obviously, you know, folk pay it back. I mean, that's part of what I did at the African Development Bank. But Ethiopia has been, you know, they're, you know, I don't know, they don't always play ball in the same way that everybody else plays ball. And let me just say, my wife is half Ethiopian. My 16-year-old daughter who lives with me, her name is Aini Allen. You know, she's got an Ethiopian name, so I'm really, and I love Ethiopian food. But Ethiopia is a little, you know, I mean, has not been necessarily the most democratic country in the world. And you know, I mean, you can drive around the country and see the palaces of the various emperors that, you know, or I don't know what they are. But anyway, I don't know. That's a question I would suggest, you know, Ethiopian lawyers, American lawyers who do business in Ethiopia, because I know Ethiopia has recently opened up. When I went to Ethiopia once, first time I kind of went there seriously, I mean, nobody had cell phones. You know, in Tanzania, the taxi drivers have cell phones. But a cell phone was like, wow. But I know now there's plazas and there's interstate highways and things that really opened up. So somehow money is coming into Ethiopia. And if money's coming in, it's going out. I mean, Ethiopian Airlines, I mean, you know, money's coming in and it's going out. But I don't know what that mechanism is.
Can you tell us how you spelled it?
Money
You said
comes in.
capital Colimbo?
Yeah, Quilambo, it's Q-U-I-M-B-O-L-O. And Quilambos were these, you know, basically Brazil, but these were these enclaves where former enslaved Africans, they created cities, they called them Quilambos. You know, Jamaica had a bunch of Quilambos. But Brazil was famous for, you know, all kinds of, you know, they had Quilambos. These communities that were independent, they were run by former enslaved Africans. So we just used the concept of how can we free up some capital? You know, how can we have some capital that's free, that's escaped? You know, it doesn't owe anybody. It's not debt. It's not looking to, you know, pay somebody's rent. It's free capital. And so we call them Quilambos. I'm involved in at least 2 Quilambos, and I make like $50 to $100 contributions every month. And like I say, my group in Mississippi, you know, they've got well over $1 million. And the group in Atlanta, I'm not technically involved in it, but I represent them. They've got substantial amounts of money. And then there's a group here in Philadelphia that I'm a part of. And, you know, they're looking to do business in Ghana. There's another group, the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, and we're creating what we're calling financial commons. And part of the financial commons will be a network of Quilambos. Because we've got to be, I mean, when we talk about self-sufficiency, I think the sister earlier said, you know, hey, we need to, you know, be coming together, and it may have been you, Cecile, that, you know, part of that is we have to start collecting our money. So every time you guys meet, y'all should send the professor, Dr. Peterson, you know, $20 and form some type of association that lasts, that goes on, you know. And, you know, if it's $20, it's $50, I mean, it's not a lot of money. You know, when you think about the amount of money you waste, at least I waste every month on a bottle of wine or cable TV or, you know, whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's a tough one. But start collecting. Oh, I'm sorry. So if you look up the history of Brazil, Africans in Brazil, you'll run into Columbus. I just use the word again. It's my coin. I'm coining that word to talk about Black investment clubs. And rather than calling them question clubs, I'm calling them Columbus.
Attorney Arrington, thank you so very much for that presentation. I did not interfere with the conversation because I want us to be as responsive as we can be to our audience and the needs that they have. And so I'm glad that you responded to the questions the way that you did. I also want to thank Cecile for putting so much information in the chat in terms of some reference information that we can all take advantage of. I know the issue of financing is a huge one, important one, and it does take a lot more conversation at what we can engage in today. So I plan to as well follow up after this session with some information for you that I can retrieve for myself and share with you. Now, we also have in mind for you an exercise. We had initially planned for more time than we have right now left for the exercise. So I'm going to ask Attorney Arrington to share the exercise with you, but I'm also going to ask him to consider how we might want to fine tune or modify or downsize it if possible. And I like the exercise because it kind of combines our conversation on cooperatives with many of our other conversations on the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. So having said that, Attorney Arrington, please present to us the ideas you have for the exercise today.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about yesterday was how to think through in building strong cooperative organizations. And so I tried to identify a couple of areas: trust among folk, the membership contract, which is the formal relationship between folk, the ability to be transparent, to share information, and how are we going to finance? How is that going to be shared equally? And so the exercise is that, okay, in your group, you're going to form a cooperative. What features, what aspects of the bylaws or the articles do you want to include to facilitate your organization building trust among its members, having contracts, formal relationships among its members, being transparent, sharing information, and facilitating financing? And what I listed were 2 sets of principles: the Rochdale Cooperative Principles, and it's on the sheet, and then the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. For me, and it's coming to fruition, that we gotta start with principles and values beyond the maximization of profits. That if our only principle and value is maximization of profits, then we're headed back toward a system that would condone enslaving people for free labor. That's the system we're coming out of. We're fighting that. We don't want that system, that all it's about is maximization of profits, even if you put certain rules around it. I mean, because there's always a struggle around those rules. We want a system that's based on values, and we want to create institutions that are based on values. So I just listed a couple things here, and it's saying in your group, look at the principles, and to the extent you think one of these principles or several of these principles could be applied to building your membership, building trust, building transparency, facilitating financing, just identify it, and then let's come back and talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Now the exercise is also in the chat. Dara, tell me something. When we go into our groups, can it also be posted elsewhere that people can see it, or Perhaps the chat is sufficient for people to retrieve it.
It can be posted in the chat. It can be shared on the screens in the various breakout rooms.
Oh, okay, great. So as far as the breakout groups are concerned, there's a listing. I'm not sure if you remember your groups, but can you show that as well, Lara?
No, that they can't see that visually.
You can't see it. Okay.
I could just name them out if you want.
Okay, let's try that then. But once we get into the groups, we're going to give you about 15 minutes to work on the exercise. After that, we're going to call you out again so you can report on what you've been able to work on. So go ahead, Yara, and name the groups for us. Persons in the groups for us.
So each group has about 8 people in it, 7 or 8. So the first group is Dean, Denise Johannes, Galaxy A50, which I think is Melissa. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I need to change your name from Galaxy A50. Juliet L. McFarlane, Louis Peterson, Linda Muhammad, and Brother Akil Andrews, who's on 2 devices, so he'll appear to be in there twice. That's breakout room 1. Let me verify something. Yes, okay. Breakout room 2, Alvin George, Dale Morton, Lorna Holly, Nicole, Sister Dejabana, Wendy Coram Violet. And please let me know if this is not the group you remember being in the last time, because I had to reschedule these groups this morning. Breakout room 3, Sister Benita Martin, Cecile Johnson, Christopher McDonald, Clark Harrington, Brother Liba, Ray J, Rosa White, Vanessa. I'm missing someone. 1 second. Apparently somebody must have gone out and come back in. Tony Thomas is also in breakout room 2 because she's in the same room with Dale. Ambassador Jasmine is supposed to be in breakout room 2 as well.
Okay.
Okay.
So please take note of that, and you're going to separate us right now, correct?
I shall, yeah.
So it's about 7, sorry, that's my wrong clock. It's about 11:45.
And the other side of the globe, that's all right. Stay with us.
My computer clock says something differently. But it's about 11:42 right now. Let's take 15. We're gonna get back to us at midday, and then we're gonna report at that particular time. Okay.
Okay. The screen sharing of the, you already put it in the chat, you're saying? So
I don't see it there.
Exercise?
I don't see it in the chat.
I thought I saw you share it, Dara, earlier.
It's not there.
No, Attorney Harrington.
The one that says breakout exercise.
Yeah, that was the attorney that shared that in the beginning. But you were saying that you wanted the specific one that you sent in the email to be shared, right?
It's the same thing. In this case, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me reshare it in case those who are in now were not in at the time when it was initially shared.
Okay.
So I'll do that now, and then I'll send to the breakout group. Somebody is trying to say something though.
Where are you sending it to?
In the Zoom chat.
Okay. Nothing is coming up.
And it hasn't gone in yet. That's why you're not seeing it.
Once we go into the groups, we're going to see it, correct?
No, okay, no, I'm putting it in now.
Is that the download? Is that the download Arlington profile? Or that's something else?
No, the second one.
Okay, for some reason, my computer doesn't ever seem to allow me to do that.
Should I try to share it?
Please go ahead and share it, yeah. This happened last week also.
Okay.
Last month also. So you can share them in the.
Okay, I just did.
Okay, there we go. There's another document that he needed shared as well, right? Or is that?
No, that's it.
Okay. So.
We don't see anything. Where did you share it to, sir?
Look in the chat.
Chat.
It didn't come up on the chat. I don't see anything. After Jasmine said something, I don't see anything else.
Jasmine said thank you. And then I sent it to everyone. I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I'm seeing it as well.
I don't see it either.
What device? Are you all on computers or?
Yeah, I
You
think,
have to download it down.
No, but they have to see it in order to download it. So if they can't see it, they can't download
I
it.
seen
Make
that
sure-
download it. I seen the thing for download it.
Okay,
I don't see it.
Wow.
okay.
Can you just copy it and drop it
Can
in?
you?
Copy
Yeah.
and drop?
The text itself,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah.
So this is the breakout group exercise that we're sharing, correct?
Yes.
All right, I'm just gonna share the cooperative principles and the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, as well as the exercise.
All right.
So it's gonna be a lot of text, but there it is.
Okay.
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 There seems to be a technical issue. Brother,
The breakout room I'm in, I'm just gonna share it on the screen.
yeah, I was gonna say that. Those who are recording, can you just share it on the screen at the time? And you can also just copy it now so that when you go in your breakout room, you can paste it again in the room. So whoever is going into those breakout rooms, go ahead and copy that. That's in the text, that's in the chat from cooperative principles down. When you go in your breakout room again, you may need to share it again.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm gonna try something, Brother Akil Andrews, because he's not able to speak for some reason on his phone. I'm clicking the button that says ask to unmute and it's not working, so I'm not sure what else to tell you, Brother Akil. There should be something on your phone that's giving you the option to unmute, or one of the buttons that it asks you to press to unmute. Otherwise, you may want to go out and come back in again, and we'll try to troubleshoot it.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, it's quite a good exercise, but extensive. So just do what you can within 15 and report back in 15 minutes.
I also see that there are specifics for group 1, group 2, and group 3.
I was about to say, yeah, keep in mind that we're looking at 3 different types of cooperatives. Group 1 is supposed to keep in mind that it's a consumer cooperative. Group 2 keeps in mind that it's a worker-owned cooperative. And then group 3 is an agricultural type cooperative. So those are the 3 types we're working with today. Okay.
And I just put that in the chat as well for group 1, group 2, group 3.
All right. So I think we are ready for the breakout session to start.
Okay.
Unless there are other questions. Okay, let's go there.
All right.
Thank you.
And you're going for 15 minutes.
15. And don't even hesitate, just cut us off at 15 minutes, okay?
Okay, y'all heard him, so it's not gonna be me.
Yep.
Just give us a countdown, please, at close to 14 minutes, all right?
Great.
Okay, thank you.
No problemo. Here we go. So you should see something on your screen. It should be just sending you into the room.
Who's that? I had to get out of the house.
Ambassador Jasmine, are you not seeing the ability to go into breakout room 2? Okay, you're gone. Excellent. I'm going to stop the recording.
If they're capable of typing it into a Word doc or any one of the docs to write, they can actually just cut and paste it and put it into the question box or the chat box.
Are we back to the full group?
Yes.
We are? Okay. Well, welcome back, everyone, to our general session, our general group. And I hope you got a lot done. I hope you got a lot of networking done as well within your group sessions. And right now we're going to have reports being given, beginning with group 1. And I think that spokesperson for group 1 is Ms. Linda Mohammed. Ms. Mohammed?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Our group dealt with the consumer food co-op, and a few ways that we wanted to incorporate the 7 principles into the organization was through membership, and using the principles of Kwanzaa would be incorporated into the bylaws in an effort to educate each new person about what we're looking for and what's important to the organization, and for them to uphold them, get into the habit of upholding them. We would also use those Kwanzaa principles as a way for signage, where we could post them, and a marketing tool to promote the 7 principles. As far as transparency and trust, we talked briefly about education, financing, and training should be free flowing. Using, and we correlated that with the Umoja principle, and that we would use education, finance, and training as a way to build transparency and trust. At the end, it was noted that we would leave the meaty details of the organization, the items of the organizations in the bylaws, and that the articles would be used just to get the, what do we say, regulations over and be approved by the local government. Thank you. I hope I was able to properly convey what our group covered. We can't hear you, Dr. Peterson.
Sorry about that. I was saying thank you, Ms. Mohammed. Good job. And I was trying to move on to group 2. Group 2, please.
Good afternoon. Our group 2 worked on workers cooperative, and what we had looked at is incorporated the Ujamo, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and in making sure that everyone has training, which is an important factor, that everyone understands what's happening. Clear understanding within meetings and regular meetings to ensure that everyone knows what is going on, especially when it comes to regular finance meetings. We discussed how it comes to our people, if they don't know how the finance is going, it causes distrust. Membership, making sure that the membership always know what's going on. So the seven rules of Kwanzaa will always allow the membership to know, new members also, to know what is going on within the organization. And Ijamo buy into a concept, and I think that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, and all of those will be written within the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you also, Ms. Rowe. And now we'll go to group 3.
Okay. With our group, we were blessed to have Mr. Harrington there. So got a little bit of clarity. It's almost the same like what the other groups have said. In our bylaws, we would reiterate the cooperative principles and Kwanzaa. But we also said that at each meeting, we would read those out so that it then became part of who we are, and we would agree to live by them. and then taking one of the principles, give a story to explain the concept. That way the people would be able to see how it applied. And we were in an agricultural co-op, so they would begin to see how it applied. And we also started out by saying one of the changes in our bylaws at a micro level would be that we would open up and close each meeting with a prayer and silent meditation, rely on faith in each other and the Creator. And one time a year, we would have a retreat, building strength and faith in our principles. We would practice self-determination by pooling our resources together in something like a susu, right? And at each meeting, okay, we covered that take a Kwanzaa thing. So one of the brothers talked about how we would build unity through acknowledging that because we are in the Afro descendants based on colonialism, had many different languages, etc., that we would try to be more tolerant of each other, even with the differences that we had, including language and culture and how we perceive things. And in that way, make a conscious effort to develop trust.
Thank you, Cecile. Thank you, all of you who made presentations, and thank you, all of you who engaged in those meaningful dialogue in your group sessions. You know, one of the common themes in all the presentations is the need to reiterate the principles, reiterate the foundation of why we are here discussing cooperatives. And for those of us who have been around cooperatives, it is really common to see in prominent places signage that reinforce the principles and the other aspects, the values of cooperatives. So that needs to be done. And of course, is a part of our principles, continuous education. So we're at the end of this session. I want to thank Attorney Arrington for being with us, for being such a resourceful person. And I'm very sure that he's going to continue to support our effort based on our conversations we had so far. And Attorney Arrington, thanks again for preparing, thanks again for sharing, and thanks for being a supporter of our initiative here in the Virgin Islands and beyond.
Dr. Peterson?
Yes, Ms. Forbes?
Not to cut you off before we go, when you're finished speaking, I've everyone turn on their camera so that I can get a screenshot of everyone again like before, so we can have that for
Thanks for that reminder. Thanks very much for that reminder. I
And
also
are we doing the survey before you shut down?
The survey will be sent to you today, okay?
Okay.
The survey will be sent to you today, and that was on my list. So everyone, please look out for the survey and respond to the survey. Please do so. Okay?
Dr. Peterson.
Yes.
Quick question. I know that the effectiveness of doing the survey now, as opposed to after the fact, is very significant. Is it possible that we could use, I know that the difference would be question 6 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yes.
it possible that you could just put in the chat what those would be so that they could just do the survey now?
Okay, I like the idea of doing the survey now. The difference really would be with respect to
The areas, the topics,
the areas discussed today.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read what I would like to have there in the difference, and can you put them in the chat for me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Did everyone follow that? We're going to have you do the survey in a few minutes. Ms. Cooper will take care of that. And as far as the specifics for today, it's a matter of how did your knowledge increase relative to the concepts of debt, equity, and sources of financing. Okay. And as a follow-up to that, which would have been question number 6 on our formal survey form, it really would be about how likely are you on a scale of 0 to 10 of implementing what you learned today regarding debt, equity, and sources of financing.
Debt, equity, and sources of financing.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just 3.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So when people see the survey, you'll see the questions from the last time, and there are 6 in there. So just using the top 3, it'll say conceptualization, needs assessment, and selecting the right type of co-op. Just replace those, please. So the first one will be debt, the second one will be equity, and the third one will be sources of finances. Is that make sense with everybody?
Can you give an
I
example?
put them in the chat.
Okay. Okay. And maybe just before they do the survey, you can put it up and, if possible, and just go through an example of what you're describing. Is that okay? No?
Well, let's try it right now then, because.
Okay.
So everyone should be seeing the survey. Don't do it now. Don't do it this time.
Don't do it now,
But
please. Don't do it now.
look at the third question, and it says, what topics interested or impacted you most? And there are 6 possibilities of answers, starting with conceptualization. Ignore that those are there, and instead think that the first, the second, and the third answer are debt, equity, and sources of finances. So you're clicking on the one that says conceptualization, but you're really checking debt. You're clicking on needs assessment, but you're really checking equity. And you're clicking on selecting the right type of co-op, but what you're really checking is sources of finances. The same thing for question 6, because it's the same 3. But everything else is fine and could work for today.
Could you repeat that, please?
Because you really can't see it because we can only go to those next
Question
numbers
1.
after we've asked one.
Right.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, the main thing that you need to understand is that in the chat,
It's going to be emailed to us.
We have a less than a 10% of people actually responding back when we don't do this live.
Right.
So we're trying to make the most of the fact that you're here and you can get these answered quickly. So it's just 3 options. In the chat, it says debt, equity, and sources of finances. When you go to question 3 and 6,
okay,
just
question
know that your first answer is debt, your second is equity, and your third is sources of finances. That's not what the question will say, but just in your mind, know that when you click the first answer, you're clicking debt. When you click the second answer, you're clicking equity. And when you click the third one, you're clicking sources of finances.
Okay.
Okay. Hope it's clear enough. Hope it's clear enough for everyone. I hope so. And so we're wrapping up, like I said, and I wanted to thank Attorney Arrington. I want to thank as well Ms. Vanessa Forbes, my assistant for the SARE program. Thank you for your support, Ms. Forbes, in preparing for today. I want to thank our COM team, Ms. Joseph, Ms. Cooper, Mr. Joseph, Ms. Cooper, Ms. Kent, Mr. Javier, who might not be here. Anyhow, I want to thank all of you for being present. But I also want to remind you that our next session is going to be on March 11th, same time, same link on March 11th. And this particular presentation is going to be a very, very different one in that we're going to allow maximum time for you to really interact with each other. The next presentation is about how to, well, let's start a cooperative business. So using all the tools that you've gained so far from all the sessions, I want you to think ahead of time within your groups, even network among yourselves between now and March 11th as to what kind of cooperative that you might want to build. It would actually make your time on March 11th more meaningful if you think and work together ahead of time. So what's going to happen is that you're going to get some very basic information from us. But most of the time, you'll be spent among yourselves developing a cooperative business. And at the end of that, of course, reporting back to us about exactly what took place. Want to make it as practical as possible. And so we're looking forward to that. And so I shared with you before today the contact information for everyone from your groups. Please take advantage of that. And as I promised, I'm going to send you what information I can send regarding financing and cooperatives. So having said that, thank you all again for joining. And we're going to start.
I need everyone to turn their camera on so I can take the picture.
Mr. Peterson.
Have a
yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes,
Is
I'm
it
hearing
possible
you.
to send the list, the contact details?
To send?
Is it possible to send the contact details for group 2, please?
The content.
Contact details for group 2. I haven't seen it.
Oh.
Contact.
Oh,
contact.
I understand. I did, but I'll resend it. I'll resend it.
So that we can at least be working together until.
Yes,
yes
I
please.
sent it a few days ago, but I will send it again. Yes, I will.
You may want to verify that her contact information is accurate then, because you did send it out to all of those that you had.
I did. But Ms. Rowe and I have been emailing for the last 2
Oh,
days.
maybe I need
so-
to check my mail.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Okay. Because we've been emailing for the
Yeah, I
last
need
few
to-
days without any problem.
Okay.
So please check. But I don't mind sending it again. I don't mind doing it.
For persons
Okay.
who have access to a camera,
So-
Okay, thank you.
on really quickly, I need to take a screenshot of all your beautiful faces for our records, please. Rosa, you are very dark in your background. I cannot see you. There you go, Chica. Dean, come on, smile for me.
Can you do a
It's
countdown when you're
nighttime
ready?
here, your
We'll
daytime.
do a countdown as soon as I
Thank you.
have people.
It's like
Juliet, Benita, Rosa, come on, people. Still can't see you, Rosa.
Addison, Cecilia.
It keeps clicking out, Vanessa.
You're in, but you're I guess you're so dark that your camera is taking you out. There you go. There you go. Okay, Benita.
Hold on. Is it only me that's open my camera?
No, everybody's camera is open. Your view is not on the full view of everybody. If you look to the right of your screen, you'll see a tiny little thing that says view. If you put it where there's a whole bunch of little boxes, that will give you a view of everybody. Okay.
Oh.
Now all of a sudden I lose.
Yeah, but their cameras are not on.
No, everybody's camera, well, not everybody, but most people's cameras are on.
Galaxy.
Whoever Galaxy is.
Galaxy. Miss Marissa, I think you're, yep, okay, good.
I guess Juliet doesn't have the access to
I
her.
don't think Miss
Just
Holly
have her
has a.
name and Benita. So, okay, ready, peoples? 1, 2, 3, smile, nice and pretty.
Cooperatives.
Thank
you.
One more.
Okay.
Ready?
Cooperatives.
Cooperatives. There we go. Thank you, people.
Cooperatives.
Wonderful.
Thank you all. Join me in saying thank you to Mr.
Thank you
Arrington,
all.
Attorney Arrington, before he leaves us,
Thank
okay?
you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Hey,
Mr.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney
Bravo.
Arrington.
Yes.
I don't think we got a chance to do the poll, you know.
No, we were
No,
gonna
no,
do
no.
the poll
We're about to do
still.
it now. We're doing it now.
We're not finished.
We're doing it
Oh.
now.
Yeah, we're not
doing it now.
finished. I think he was just doing the last minute.
Yes,
Wrap up
I don't mind. I don't mind saying thank you multiple times, Dale.
I was actually here just redoing the poll now to make it simpler while we were
Okay.
doing all of that.
Okay, you still working on it?
Yeah, but
Okay, okay.
I think we may want to, unless you had something else you were going to say to wrap up. So that when we're done the poll, we can just leave.
No, continue, and when you're ready, you let me know. I just wanted to really be clear about where we want to go with this activity. We have written many grants so far in the territory of the USVI to conduct cooperative training among us, and they've been going very well. But the funders are now asking us, where are the cooperatives? Asking us, where's the impact?
Here.
Asking us beyond the training, what do we have to show for it? And so in my last grant proposal, I did indicate that hopefully through our mentorship phase, we'll be able to actually implement what we've been practicing. Because I believe that one of the weaknesses that we have here in our territory is that we have no functional cooperatives that can set the example for us, or that we can use as a partner as we build our other cooperatives. You got me? On the US mainland and elsewhere, there are multiple examples. And so they can build among themselves cohesive partnerships that can help each other out. Because one of the principles of cooperative development is cooperatives helping cooperatives, we are taking advantage of this particular principle to reach out to other fellow cooperatives across the US mainland and elsewhere. And that is where we hope to make impact now through these connections during phase 2. And that is why I said to you, keep the big picture in mind and keep in mind what you would like to do based on the information that we are sharing. So during phase 2, it's meant to be a case where, okay, you know, those of us in group 1 or 2 or 3, we think we know what we want to do with this. So now that we know let's work together with the mentors to develop what we collectively want to get done. Am I being clear?
Yes.
So that's the goal.
Yes, sir.
That's the big picture, and that's what we're hoping to achieve. Okay.
So I have a question. So we
Sure.
were in group 3, we were in agriculture. So we're sticking with agriculture. Group 1
Not,
was in something else.
not
Or we,
necessarily.
no,
Not
okay,
necessarily. That was
okay,
an example for today.
okay, okay. The
Right.
Virgin Islands has been on my mind since the last time we were in session, and the group that I was in highlighted, you know, the 98% importation, poor food quality, you know, just so many barriers, right? And so this exercise that we're doing is really needed because as that person had spoken, we realized that you also had things that other people don't have, like the aloe. And so the asset mapping of what you already have, sometimes we think we're deficient, but it's because we're not looking at what we already have, right? And then
That's
putting
correct.
value to that. And so that model, I've been talking to my friend in Belize and my friend in Nigeria, as we look at what you're doing and how we could begin to do something collective where we are, what we're growing in Belize or what we're growing in Jamaica or what we're growing in Nigeria, and what you're growing in the Virgin Islands. And then how do we kind of trade with each other, you know, to build our own capacity. So I haven't fully figured it out, but the course that we're taking here has been very stimulating, especially when the Virgin Islanders expressed what their dilemma is, you know, and how can we
Excellent
help them?
vision.
Yeah.
Excellent vision. Thanks for sharing.
I think,
Oftentimes,
yeah.
oftentimes we think we are deficient because we're looking at our individual resources.
Right. But as a collective Afro-descendant and African collective, then whatever we're deficient in, we're not, because somebody in
Exactly.
our group can provide it. And that if we
Exactly.
could do something like that, then we would really.
Exactly.
So then the question is, in the cooperative, are we then restricted to one location? And if we form something like this as an international cooperative, is that allowed?
I'll give that thought. I know that I'm not aware of any international cooperative. I'm aware of international relationships among cooperatives. And I think Attorney Arrington has left us right now, but I don't know of any international cooperative per se, but like I said, I know about relationships. But there is the International Cooperative Alliance, and that forms an umbrella. It's an umbrella organization that oversees cooperatives. As a matter of fact, the 7 principles that we're aware of, some of us think that they might be a localized set of principles, but they're international principles by the International Alliance on Cooperatives. So that's my answer to your question for now. And it's something for us to look into, but I think more realistically, I think there are relationships internationally among cooperatives, which works well, which works well. Mm-hmm.
You know, Mr. Peterson and Cecile, you know, like I was saying about the import-export of monies here, I think that's where we can come in within the African continent and the Caribbean and America, in that we can't move money out of the country, but we can move product. So in working together internationally, we can still move product to outside of Africa, but not finances. That means the product can go to the islands and wherever they were sent to, and the flights are running. So I can see where the islands and the continent can really work together. We might, you know, like the attorney said, some of the things that they had said were not required or were not legal or could not be done is now done.
Right.
So we might be the one that have to start something new. We are international. And I think it's an idea because we do have that problem here in Africa where we need to grow. We have the product, but we don't have the market. And presently the market outside there's a middleman who's bringing products to our people on the islands and in America and in England and places like that. we might be the new ones that are able to start something new in getting that running.
Excellent thinking.
Dr. Peterson?
Yes, are you ready?
Yeah, the new one that I just did isn't going to be working, so we just need to go back to plan A.
Okay, thanks for trying.
Mhm.
So we're ready for the poll to be issued and for us to work on to complete. Keeping in mind the changes that Ms. Cooper described to us.
I'm putting them back in the chat again. For question 3 and 6, your answers 1, 2, and 3 are debt, equity, and sources of finances. All right, ready? And
Source and finance and 6, okay.
yeah,